Okay, let's see. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I have my friend Ron Angel with me. He's going to let us know how was his journey with real estate. He's a wholesaler. Ron, how are you?
Doing great, Christina. How are you?
Fine. Today's a Saturday, and we were like going back and forth trying to do a Facebook Live, and unfortunately, I couldn't figure it out for the.
Well, I couldn't either.
it was it was so difficult, and then we tried to do it on the phone, and for some reason it failed. So it's a learning curve. I will get there. I will make it happen.
Yes,
So
you will.
that's my goal now for the nenext 2 days. But Ron, tell me, everybody wants to know about your journey. Let me know and tell us what you did before real estate, how or what made you go into real estate. What was the switch that made it happen?
Yeah, you got it. No, I love telling the story. So, firstly, I'm at a Starbucks this morning. It's Saturday. I usually come here and do like heads down work and catch up. So, apologies for the background noise, and I know the visual isn't great with the kind of the light coming in behind me, but we'll make it work. But yeah, so I guess I've had an interesting journey. I Prior to being in real estate, I was in the military for a few years back in the early 2000s, got out in the end of 2006, finished my degree, and then went into tech, right? So I was a software engineer for many years, did that whole career for about 14 years and kind of moved up the corporate ladder, as it were, gains and responsibilities and leadership positions and so on. And it was during COVID that I realized that I didn't want to be in tech anymore. I had previously had a lot of passion for that industry and all the problem solving and so on. Like it really fired me up, but it was starting to lose that feel, especially as I went into like higher leadership roles where I love leading. I love taking care of my people and mentoring and coaching them. Like I absolutely love that stuff, but it's the other stuff that all the baggage that comes with it, like being further away from the details. I was no longer actually doing the hands-on coding, and then all the politics and stress that just kind of comes down from the top. So it was towards the end of 2020. I think I just felt like, oh my God, I need something else. Being home every day, because during COVID it was working from home, and being closer to the family, having gotten rid of my commute. I was commuting about an hour and a half each way into Manhattan. I live on Long Island. And so getting those 3 hours back, all the extra time with my family, my wife and kids, I started to really realize like what I was missing out on by putting all my energy into my career. And so I decided I needed some sort of change, and I knew that real estate was going to be that vehicle.
Okay.
And
Why? How? From all of the other careers, and how you end up with like real estate in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have dabbled in real estate in the past. After I got out of the military, my wife, who was still in the military, in the army, got stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia, and we bought a house, kind of knowing that we wouldn't be there very long and we would move out and rent it out. Right? I had learned from other people in the military that, as you move from duty station to duty station, you buy a house, you move out, you rent it out, and then you just keep doing it. And by the time you retire, you have maybe 8, 10 houses that are now part of kind of your passive income to help you in retirement. So that was that seed had already been planted even when I was in the military. So we did that. We bought our first house. She got deployed to Iraq because this was like in 2007, 2008 timeframe. I moved back home to live with my parents on Long Island, New York, and we ended up buying another house as a rental. And for a long time, we had those two rentals, and they weren't really cash flowing. It was kind of breaking even. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. It's like, okay, the rent is paying the mortgage and all that stuff. So over time, I'll get appreciation and I'll pay the mortgage, and that'll be nice. But I didn't really do a lot of it for about 10 years. But I always knew that was something that there was a lot of opportunities to do if I wanted to continue to invest in it some time.
Oh, okay. So when COVID happened, your job closed. So you stay not closed, but you have to work from home.
Yeah.
A lot of people. Yeah. So you spend more time with your family, and you felt like you wanted to gain that back.
Exactly. And it was a lot of stress in my job. I was working for a big software company, and I was in sort of an incubator within that company that was kind of like an innovation lab. And there was a lot of pressure for us to, get our initial clients onboarded and successful, and a lot of late nights and weekends and stress. And it just like I was questioning why I was doing it. Like, I mean, I was making great money, right? I mean, in tech working in Manhattan, but I was questioning, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? Not just me, but my kids as well. I remember one evening, there was something going on with the website, and I had to go hide in my office, or in our bedroom. And I remember, like, because I was getting on a call, we were trying to figure some stuff out, and I remember my son coming in and basically crying, saying, "Daddy, I want you to spend time with me. Like, you're here working. And when are you going to spend time with us?" That wrecked me. I mean, that was
That's hard.
it's hard to describe. It was hard. So that was kind of the beginning of the realization that something needed to happen.
Okay. Yeah, that is hard. So I'm gonna ask you, what is your mission, your why? I know everybody says that you have to find your why first, before you start doing something. What is your why? I'm pretty sure it's your family, right?
It's more than just my family,
Mhm.
honestly. I mean, it's my family, but it's also pursuit of personal development and improvement of myself, and also showing up to serve everybody around me, be it the people that I serve in real estate or my family, and friends. So it's kind of all those things. It's not one dimensional. Everyone says it's the family, but it's for me, it's much more than that.
Has your wife evolved from the when you started, like, when you decided to go into real estate, and now today,
That's a
has your
great
wife
question.
has changed?
No, but I will say this. It's less about the why changing and more about, as I was doing deep personal work, discovering more, if that makes sense. So there was
Depends.
it was deeper, like figuring out really what my why is. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have these things, we have these core beliefs
Mhm.
in deep inside, and a lot of times we don't even realize it, right? We act according to what people around us or society, what we think they expect of us, and we're not always true to ourselves. And as I was doing a lot of work, I was actually working with a certified high performance coach, and we're doing a lot of deep work, a lot of reflection, and kind of digging down to figure out what's happening, in here. And through that, I discovered that it's not just about my career pursuit, and it was, family and self-improvement, and then service.
That's great. And right now, what is your mission? What is your goal?
Yeah. So, I mean, fast forward a little bit, I started my journey down real estate.
Mhm.
I realized that I wanted to leave my job and do that full time, and like build up an active income there. I had originally thought that maybe I would stay in tech for a few more years and build like a cash flowing portfolio, and then do like a smooth transition. But as I got going in it, and it got more exciting, and I just started to develop a real passion for the real estate, I was looking for ways to just cut and done, right?
Oh, okay.
And so I came up with a plan. We set set aside a runway for
Mhm.
both building a business as well as for helping sustain our personal finances while I was building that income. And I quit my job. I told my boss in, I think it was May 2021, that probably by the end of the year, I'm leaving, right? And I explained to him what was happening and what I was planning to do. And that's what I ended up doing at the end of 2021. That was my last day of work, and then I started to go into real estate full time.
Now, I know that you went to an event, which is the Seven Figure Flipping Life.
Oh yeah.
I did went to this event when back in 2020. I think it was 2020 when they did it virtual.
Virtual.
And yes, and it changed a lot of my vision, my
Yeah.
goals, and it pushed me to do a lot. So when you decided that you wanted more, you did jump on this event. How this trajectory happened,
Well, I knew about, I had learned about seven figure flipping from another mastermind that I joined for like veteran and military investors. Some of those guys were also in seven figure and had gone to those events. So I knew I wanted to go to that event in October. And I also knew that I wanted to join the seven figure mastermind as well. So for that one, I would have to join what they call the runway program, which is like they're kind of like newbies. I was technically a newbie. And they only opened it up once a year. Now they actually open it up every quarter, but I knew I had to wait till October. And it was right. They always open the doors right after Flip Packing Live. So I was looking forward to that event and I went and it was, like you said, it was life changing. And I don't know, like you can only imagine, Christina, if a virtual event was life changing, just imagine the live version, right?
Yes.
It was insane. It was 3 days, like amazing presentations, not just on real estate, but other things, mindset and personal development and failure and how to grow from failure. There's so many different like amazing speakers and they had roundtables and it was just so immersive and there's so much energy and it's like the right kind of energy. You know what I'm saying? It felt like people around me had the same sort of values that I had and showed up the same way. So it felt like almost like being part of a family.
Yes. And now there are so many ways to invest in real estate, like a lot. How you decided to go into wholesaling?
So I knew that I needed to build up an active income very quickly because it takes a while. Like if I were to go into like just into rentals or multifamily, that takes a while to start building up the capacity. And it takes a lot of capital as well, right? Because you need to have the capital to feed into that. But so I knew I needed to build up an active income. So the two ways that I could have done it is wholesaling or flipping. And I knew I wasn't going to do it locally here on Long Island because for various reasons between the price points and the kind of there's other challenges. So I knew I had to do it virtually and I was like flipping was never very to me. I'm not a handy person. I'm not good with construction or even those like conceptually those things. And so wholesaling was one that felt like I can not quickly but relatively quickly build up an active income and not and I could totally do it virtually and not have to deal with rehabs, which I felt at least as a newbie would carry a little bit more risk. I knew with wholesaling I just needed to have my runway for my marketing spend, and then I could just develop the rest of it as I went.
Okay, so when you decided wholesaling, you set aside like a budget, so many months I need to have a runaway. You joined the group, you started doing. Now, how you decided your market? Is this something that the program show you how to do, or you had an idea in mind where to go?
Yeah, good question. So the program does have some materials around how to pick a market, how to analyze markets and all that. I had also previously done a market analysis prior to joining Runway. I was looking at like 50, 60, 70 different markets across the US. And so I kind of incorporated those two analyses and I ended up with what I ended up going with, which is Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay, you have only one market right now, right?
Right now, I'm focused on really all of Wake County because Raleigh itself is super competitive. So I have to kind of reach out to the tendrils of the surrounding suburbs around Raleigh. So it's all of Wake County, but it's still relatively concentrated. It's not like all of North Carolina. It's not Durham. I'm staying out of Durham for now. So I'm trying to be very focused.
Raleigh is a very hot market right now.
Yes, it is.
How are you dealing with that? What are your strategies?
And it was very challenging at first. It took me like 5 months to get my first deal. But then once that one popped, it was a huge assignment fee and that gave me runway to keep going. And then the next month I had another one and then another one. It started to kind of snowball a little bit. But yeah, it did take a long time to build up momentum. And I also had to make some shifts in strategy, my marketing strategy. I was going with direct mail initially. And then after that was so slow going for like several months, I decided to add cold calling to try to accelerate the lead generation. And I knew that was working for a lot of other investors that mastermind. And so I set up a cold calling system. I hired one cold caller, then another. So now I have two cold callers and it was my very first deal that came from a cold call, believe it or not. And then
that was a huge change.
It was a huge change.
Propelled you, right?
Absolutely. But then my second, and I got to a point where I was about to turn off my direct mail because nothing had happened. Like leads were coming in, but then I had gotten a super hot lead one morning. I was going to drop my kids off at school, and somebody got one of my postcards and called, and I knew that there was urgency there. I knew that there was high motivation. And later that day, it was under contract. 3 weeks later, 3 or 4 weeks later, we were closed for another very high sign fee. So now I had my first direct mail.
So you right now you do both?
Yeah. So as far as marketing, I have cold calling, direct mail, and Google pay-per-click.
Okay. Now, when you started, I'm assuming you were doing everything yourself. You were one show man.
I wasn't a one-man show. I actually made a hire very early on in the process because I knew that like I hired a general kind of VA, a virtual assistant, to do like general ops, that kind of stuff, to help offload some of the more labor-intensive tasks, repetitive tasks. And she's been great. So even before, so I actually started all this a couple of months before I left my job. I just starting to build up everything. And I hired her in December before I left. So she's obviously still with the company. She's absolutely amazing. But it wasn't until I hired my first cold caller in February that I actually had like another full-timer, working.
Perfect. Now, tell me now, how is your business? We talk about the start, and now how are you doing?
Yep. So right now, I think I've closed 5 or 6 deals total. I have the team has grown to 6. I have an acquisition manager, a disposition manager / TC, 2 cold callers, a lead manager, and my general VA. And I did a Facebook Live last night. Just kind of reflecting back on that. I feel like I have all the seats on the bus are kind of filled, and everyone is still ramping up, especially with the 2 new folks, the acquisition manager and dispo manager. But they're starting to now get momentum. Like my acquisition manager has already gotten me 3 contracts. He's very close on a few others. My dispo manager just yesterday accepted her first offer from a buyer, so she's almost gotten one fully over the finish line on the dispo side. And so like things are really ramping up. So what my focus is now is like defining the systems and processes and the KPIs. And I'm focused on getting some good financial reporting and financial controls in the company so that we can see which marketing channels are returning and how much and where we're spending, and doing all that stuff so that we can grow sustainably and not let costs kind of go out of control without us seeing. So those are my that's my focus right now. And also I'm doing the 500K challenge and start raising money because even as a wholesaler, one exit strategy that I'm interested in starting to do and have passed on a few of these is wholesaling, which is the house is already in great shape. You just close on it and then list it, or do a little bit of work, clean out, maybe paint carpet, cosmetic, and then list it. And so I've already I've seen 3 of those properties come across already, and all of them would have been great wholesales. I ended up assigning them. I ended up wholesaling them. Still made really nice profit, but I think I could have really maximized it when it was in wholesale. So I'm raising money to enable me to actually take down these properties and to do the wholesale to try to maximize the profits.
Oh, okay. So what are your projections for this year? What are you expecting this year? And what are your goals for, well, I know it's too soon, we're in August, but what are you thinking, I don't know, a vision for next year? What do you see yourself next year?
I mean, I don't have exact projections for this year. I think we'll end up doing maybe somewhere between 15 to 20 closed deals by the end of the year. For the year, not another 15 to 20, but total. Okay. And then from a revenue standpoint, I think that should end us up around somewhere around at least 300, maybe 400K gross profit. Right. And then you obviously got to take out marketing and payroll and all that stuff. So, and then for next year, I haven't really thought about it. I know like coming out of events like Flip Hacking Live, that's when you kind of take stock and see where you are, and then start setting goals for the next quarter or maybe the next year. So I think coming out of Flip Hacking Live, or maybe coming out of the next event for seven figures, which is usually January, I'll start thinking about, okay, what are my goals, the big goals that I want to do for 2023.
Now, are you going to the Flip event on October?
Yeah, you could keep me with it.
Okay. Now, what do you expect for the event?
Well, I expect to see a lot of my good friends, and I'm assuming you're going to be there, so I'm looking forward to seeing you again. We first met at Multifamily Live.
Yes.
So yeah, so we're going to hang out and hang out with all the other members of the mastermind and meet some new folks. I recently moved up from the runway group to the altitude group, so I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of the altitude members that I haven't really interacted with much. And I'm looking forward to like amazing content. Kind of like the up to the minute strategies of what's working right now with the market shifting.
Yeah, and now is a very important moment because everybody is talking about the recession and what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
So we'll see what the speakers have to say.
Yeah.
Now, do you think next year you will switch to multifamily, or is that something that you have on your mind on the back of burner?
That's a good question. So I did attend Multifamily Live this past year. I actually attended the previous year, as well as a virtual event. And I had a bit of an identity crisis at the end of Multifamily Live. I was thinking,
what happened?
I had a hallway conversation with somebody who told me that, because I do want to go into multifamily eventually, right? I think for the passive income, it's very, very powerful. And so I had a hallway conversation with someone who started off as a wholesaler and now is moving into multifamily, and told me, look, if you want to do multifamily eventually, just do it now. Because if you don't, you're just slowing yourself down. And that made sense. So I had a bit of an identity crisis. I was reaching out to some of my friends and some of the senior members in the mastermind just to get their advice to see where, what I should do. Or to help guide me in the decision, not to tell me what to do, but to help me think, like, what are the things I need to consider? And what I ended up with is I realized that this is kind of cool. This kind of goes back to where I was a year and a half ago before I made the transition. I realized that I had a passion for something, and I realized that I really was passionate about building this wholesaling business, and I wanted to see that like there's a lot of power in kind of finishing something that I started.
Focus, right?
The focus and like kind of running through the finish line, and not just like, oh, let me do this, let me do this, let me do this. It's just like do it until it's done. And I was really enjoying it because I was even back in June was starting to see some good momentum, and so I wanted to kind of see it through and just keep going. So I'm really glad I did that, because since then, hired 3 more people and blah blah blah, like all those recent changes, and now it's really snowballing. I can see where it's going to end up. So
yeah, it's good to focus on one thing and then focus on another one. Yeah, it doesn't have, and I'm sure you will join eventually. Yes. You were already a landlord before, so.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, eventually, sure. Once I kind of build up the business, it's self-sustaining, and I can kind of keep growing it without as much attention, and I can start focusing on other things like multifamily.
Now, Ron, to finish, what can you tell a new, someone that wants to start in this business, in this wholesale business, or eventually in real estate in general?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to find either a mentor or like a group of other investors that you can learn from, because when you're first starting out, it just seems it's so intimidating. There's so many things that you feel like you need to learn and you don't know how to do, and you can really get stuck. I kind of was there earlier on in my journey, and I felt really stuck, but it wasn't until I surrounded myself with other investors and I could see the exact steps that they're taking to make things happen and learn from them, and then try them and then see that they work and build momentum that way. That was the thing that was most effective. So either find a mentor that can guide you along the way, or a group of people that are doing the same thing that you can mastermind with and learn from, and that can help you. Okay, great. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being so patient with me. You got it. And we'll see you in October. So thanks for having me on. Yeah, we'll see you later, Christina. Thank you, Ron.